Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Darryl Grove. There is joy in my voice. I'm joined by a man who I do not expect to hear joy in his voice. It is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
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 Nah, I'm kidding. Hey, what's up, buddy?
Man United lost to Sevilla in the second leg of the Champions League.
Yep.
That's what's up. I feel like you had a moment of the sadness when your team goes out of the Champions League, and then you kind of rebounded from it.
Nothing has been smashed. I looked around. There's lots of breakable things, but it didn't seem worthwhile. It didn't seem worth doing.
We should tidy the office/studio at some point.
Nah, it's fine.
Just in case of future defeats.
This is how you get ants. That is true. So yeah, maybe.
And you did, I think, very bravely do a Clockwork Orange style rewatch of segments of Man United 1, Sevilla 2. We had to pin your eyes open. So you do the torture therapy. Oh, not my lovely Ludwig van Lingard situation.
Well, it would be different if they were ever like particularly enjoyable to make it so that it. But actually, it's strangely sort of like therapeutic to rewatch just so you can try to figure out
what went wrong.
Exactly.
So it's not blind rage; it's informed rage.
Exactly, because so often the blind rage is misdirected, and it's misdirected at the obvious people. So, for example, I have not read much in terms of message board comments. I'm assuming there's going to be
a good policy in general.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of vitriol directed at Miron Fellaini because he is an obvious target, both because he is gigantic and because he tends to make mistakes. I do not think that he was the problem.
The starting and then substituting of Fellaini is an interesting sort of tactical turning point in this game, which I'm assuming we will get into.
Yes.
All right, so this all... Oh, before we get into it, a couple of corrections from recent shows. We'll do this really quick. I want to make sure we do not forget. So, on the last show, we did a review of the weekend's action, and I believe I commented that the West Ham corner flag protest, where there's a guy grabbed the corner flag and ran and put it in the centre circle, was pointless, unless he was suggesting that midfielders should take corners.
It was a good joke. It was a good joke.
It was a good joke, but it was incorrect. So I don't think many people knew this, but the news came out today, right? So Thomas Cran was the first person to spot it and email it to me. Apparently, this is in reference to a 1992 successful West Ham protest. Do you know the details of it?
I read the article briefly while not driving, but I think I'd pull it up in front of my house.
Okay.
But it had to do with what it was like a loan scheme or scam in 1992 that was...
I think West Ham fans would call it a scam. What they did is they were trying to raise money for the club in 1992, and they introduced bonds, right? West Ham bonds that fans could buy to invest in the team and give the team some money.
That was the word I was looking for.
They wouldn't let you buy a season ticket unless you bought some bonds. So this was a massive protest against that, and he planted the corner flag in the centre circle as I take my stand. He literally sat in the centre circle, would not move. Right? And it was successful. The club rolled it back, stopped making people buy bonds before they could buy season tickets. So I think that fan was trying to tap into that spirit and trying to sort of send a message to everybody else that this is one of those moments. This is literally a plant your flag in the ground moment.
And while I get the symbolism there, the key difference for me is that, now I didn't watch the video from 1992. I saw a couple of the images.
Actually, I'll be honest, I didn't click the link that Thomas Cran sent us because it was a Daily Mail link. I went and found the story in the Evening Standard instead.
Ethics. But the photos that I saw, the fan in question, even after the corner flag was removed by one of the players, just sat there, not aggressively, but just sort of like a sit-in, I am upset by these things protest.
Yep.
And I would
Julian Dix of all, remember Julian Dix? Really aggressive defender, towering over him. I mean, he's way more scary than Mark Noble.
I believe that was who picked up the corner flag and sort of held it menacingly, or at least just held it. But I would say that's the difference, though, for me, is that it's still, if that was a coordinated effort by West Ham fans, it would still have resonated more than one fan running on, getting tackled, another fan coming on to be annoyed with Mark Noble for trying to get the fan off the field, and then a third trotting on to plant the corner flag. It felt, even if I understand where that feeling is coming from, it still, I don't think, was as kind of unified of an approach.
Okay, so I basically agree with all of that, but it was worth pointing out that there was more symbolism to that flag thing than we originally intended.
There's a historical connection.
All right, the second thing I got wrong, this is a torturous show for me as well. The second thing I got wrong, I think one of the LAFC goals, Latif Blessing's goal, which we're still not sure about the offside on this, but I made the argument that I think because the ball wasn't played forward by, I believe, Beitashour, it was played laterally, that then Blessing can't be offside because the ball has to be played forward for an offside decision to be given. 100% wrong.
Yeah.
100% wrong. Well, it's more about the player can't be in a forward position and then come back.
Well, and that we know, because we know you can't come from an offside position to an onside position, even if you're just running back to receive a pass.
I honestly thought if the ball was played slightly backwards, you could come back from an offside position and receive it. 100% wrong.
Gotcha. Yes. But I think
Ira Jersey was the first to email.
The thing that probably should have clued us in a bit more is just the fact...
That I was saying
it? Yes, that's number one. But I think the thing that was like added the wrinkle, because I was pretty confident that he should have been called offside. Yeah. But I was with you.
Or at least
that
I was wrong about the lateral pass thing.
Well, I think the confusing part is that usually when a player comes back, they're not scoring the goal in the same motion off the lateral pass.
Yeah.
So it's a weird thing to think about of like, but he's scoring, but he's coming from behind. I don't know. So it takes a moment to get used to. But yes, obviously, in retrospect. Offside.
Here's where I think I got confused is that normally, if you've got sort of two players they've got behind the defensive line, it's just them and the goalkeeper. Yeah. If you play a forward pass, then they're still offside, right? So that's called offside. So what you'll often see is players cut it backwards and the player will be behind the ball and receive it. So I think I was confused by that because I thought it was because the ball is going backwards, that's why they're not offside. It's actually because that player is not in an offside position that isn't called offside.
There you go.
Okay, so I think we've cleared that up.
I think so.
Basically, don't listen to me about offside rules.
Well, you're not wrong. That
or make sure to listen to the next show after I state something confidently to make sure there's not a correction.
But you're not wrong that a lateral pass, if the player had been on the right side of the ball, it's just if you're on the wrong side, then a lateral pass doesn't matter because you're still in an offside position.
There we go. All right, so all that is cleared up. And speaking of men getting things wrong, back to Manchester United.
Sure.
And I'm going to say, and Jose Mourinho.
I think Jose Mourinho certainly has a decent amount of the burden to carry, but I don't think the players did much to cover themselves in glory on this one. The Sevilla players certainly did.
They certainly did. Should we talk about what Sevilla's plan was, maybe?
Sure. I mean, I can't say that I have focused as much on that because I was so confused as to what Manchester United were trying to do. My assumption was that Sevilla were, with the 0-0 draw at home, going to Old Trafford, they were going to sit deep, try to frustrate United, have like compact numbers behind, and basically then look to counter. I'm not sure that's...
I'd say sit compact is what they weren't really deep in terms of like all like building a brick wall or parking the bus type thing, but it was more they kept men centrally, kept a line and just sort of didn't chase the ball so much as just blocked space for Manchester United to try and play through the middle. It was really impossible for United to do that.
And I think actually they did a weird, I'm not sure what the term would be, I guess like the Goldilocks approach. It was just right. Because they didn't sit too deep, but they didn't keep a high line. And I do think...
It's called Gegenpressing.
Sure. Perfect. I love that. But I do think that they kept a line in a space where basically it felt like they were inviting United's attackers to try to turn and play through and run through the line and break and like get those chances. But in reality, the times that United would try to play the ball over the top, it ended up either going out of bounds or being collected by the goalkeeper. Or a defender would be there to put the pressure on and force the turnover.
Yep.
It felt like they weren't
just
sitting
deep enough that there wasn't space in behind,
and it was
and not high enough.
And I think a key component was that it was just far enough advanced that they didn't leave a lot of space, so it wasn't just a high line. But it also meant that I think Manchester United weren't able to regain possession for the majority of the game. They weren't able to regain it in the location on the field, close to midfield where they wanted to have it, so that you can build your attack from midfield as opposed to building from your own 18. And once you're building from there, you get a little bit stretched. You can't really string those passes together.
I think that's correct. I think, okay, should we do this? Can we start with the goal? So I know it's finished 2-1. There were 3 goals. I think Sevilla's first goal, the one that was scored by Ben Yedder off the bench, I think that's the key to this whole game, not least because it's sort of game over for Man United at that point, right? Especially then when there's the second goal. But it's sort of game over. And that goal contained a lot of what United got wrong and Sevilla got right. It sort of illustrates everything that's going on in this game.
Sure.
I think most of the replays will show you it's Valencia trying to play a ball down the line to Alexis Sanchez, and the ball's a bit of a stretch, and the left-back Escudero can easily step and win it, and then here come Sevilla.
Yeah, I mean, and then from there, it's a couple passes. It's United in transition, but not able to get numbers on the ball or like any sort of sustained pressure, so that there's time for Sevilla to pass the ball through.
But before we get into the details of that, I think that's the key thing: is that that Valencia couldn't find Alexis Sanchez, and it just seemed like this constant thing that Man United, for me, could not connect passes coming out of the back, looking for the forward players. It just never quite got there, and I think there were good reasons for that.
Well, what do you think they were?
I think for one thing, I think maybe a good example is Sanchez in this situation. He's trying to sort of run sort of in behind or run long and run deep, whereas Valencia is trying to play it short to feet. And I think you saw lots of variations of that, where there were not options to play. Didn't we rewatch when we did the Clockwork Orange thing with you? We rewatched so many times United, especially fullbacks, were trying to play balls into midfield or balls into wingers, and they either wouldn't get there, or the wingers would be trying to turn under pressure. There was no second pass for them. It just seemed really difficult for Man United to get any sort of passing from defence to the attackers.
So how does that play into the goal, though? I'm confused.
Because that's how the ball is turned over. Because they're trying to Valencia is trying to find Sanchez and can't find Sanchez.
Okay,
does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean it does. I think that was also part of United's game plan, was that they wanted to keep their attackers wide to try to pull Sevilla out, and I think Sevilla didn't bite for that at all. And it seemed like United didn't adjust. They just thought eventually they'll get stretched.
Yes.
So keep trying to force that ball through. And we saw it a lot with Sanchez trying to turn, Rashford especially a couple times.
Especially guilty of this.
And even Lukaku once or twice. I thought Lukaku probably had a stronger game than most other United players, but even he would try to turn into pressure. And so then I think what happened is United players would try to drift a little bit away to maybe then check back, but even then it didn't get any sort of sustained opportunities.
It's just really weird to talk about a very high-level soccer team like Manchester United being unable to get the ball to the feet of attackers.
Or just adapt. But yes, I think, to your point, I mean, I'm not trying to throw him under the bus here, but Paul Pogba comes on for Marouane Fellaini, I believe it was, and I think in the final 10 minutes passed the ball out of bounds 3 times. And that is odd. It was very strange to me that United, for as much talent as they have and as much money as they've spent, to not be able to find passes to the point where even before that goal, when there's the Valencia pass looking for Sanchez.
Yeah.
Even before that, there was a pass from Ashley Young, really trying to force the ball into the middle to Jesse Lingard.
Yes.
That ball gets picked off.
He was that was a weird thing. He was the only possible option in the middle of the field. Everybody else was stretched wide or marked up. Like Lukaku had defenders on him, so he wasn't an option. Lingard was the only option.
Yeah, it felt as though United, like Jose Mourinho had told the players, you may make one run, and if you don't get the pass, then you have to stop. Because in that situation, Marcus Rashford has already made a run down the line, the ball's not on, and then I don't see him come back into frame, so then Ashley Young can't play there. He doesn't want to drop back because this is right around the time that the fans started to boo when United were just slowly moving the ball around their own half, not really getting in. And so I think he was trying to make something happen. He tries to force that ball in. It gets intercepted. If Sevilla were a little bit faster on the break, that might have been the goal right there. Instead, it comes a couple minutes later.
So we mentioned at the top of the show that there was a big difference when Fellaini came off for Paul Pogba. It seemed to me that Fellaini was playing high and United were looking for some long balls, essentially. They were trying to have an extra Lukaku, essentially a guy who can win all the aerial challenges. So he played higher up the field. When Pogba comes on, Pogba doesn't do that, despite being basically the same height, right? But he wants more of the ball at his feet. So Pogba comes and sits deeper. And if anything, he weirdly adds to the problem because it's another guy sitting deep, looking for passes upfield. And there are even fewer people to pass to.
Yeah, that makes it. I think maybe you were already there, but I think this has all just clicked to me. That the idea United came out and probably, I think the prevailing wisdom was going to be, it's Fellaini replacing McTominay. They're in a 4-2-3-1. But I think to your point, it's much more of a 4-1-4-1, Fellaini further up the field. And I think the idea is they're going to sit deep, they being Sevilla. So let's get Fellaini up top. Let's get Lukaku farther up the field. We'll push that ball in. They'll settle it, and that's how we'll get possession. We'll get possession in their third by playing that long ball, settling it because we'll have the time and space. Then we'll move the ball around. And you can try that, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to move the ball. They did a couple times in the first 10 minutes, but then it seemed like Sevilla established a bit of their own possession, and suddenly it was like, all right, that's not going to work, let's change it all up, and you kind of lost that directness.
Do you know what I see the difference being is that, especially in comparison to the game against Liverpool, where famously it worked, right, to go long, and Lukaku got destroyed Lovren and got all those flick-ons. Sevilla centre-backs, Kerr, who I'm somewhat familiar with, and Lenglet, who I wasn't really familiar with until today, but I'm very impressed with after what he did to Lukaku. And then in midfield, they've also got height, right? It's not often that a Mourinho team, this Man United Mourinho team, comes up against a team that also has height in midfield, right? And Zonzi is a big dude. I believe Vasquez, number 22, is pretty big. So they were not winning those, dominating midfield in the air like they usually do. Yeah. And, I mean, Mourinho could have measured those guys and seen what was up, but it seemed like he didn't see that coming.
No, I think he didn't see a lot of stuff coming today. And I think worth noting, we haven't talked as much about Sevilla's tactics. I know we've already said that, but I mean, they deserved this victory 100%. 21 shots on I don't know if those 21 shots on frame, but 21 shots from Sevilla, the most United have given up all season.
Sounds right.
That is a very telling statistic.
Mostly on the counter when Man United passing broke down, right?
Yeah.
So I distracted us heavily, but should we get to the actual goal?
Sure.
That first goal from Ben Yedder. So as we said, Escudero reads it, steps, beats Sanchez to the ball really easily. Then I think there's a bit of a 50-50 after he gets a touch.
Well, I would just say one thing, because I don't want it to sound like I think Sanchez did not have a very good game, but I don't think it was for a lack of trying. And there, it's basically, I think Sanchez has already made that run away, and then the ball is played short. So I think it's a 50-50 challenge. Yeah. So I wouldn't say it wasn't just that he was like, oh, you didn't play with the ball. I'm giving up. I don't know why I feel that's important to note, other than that it wasn't just sort of capitulation.
I think we don't have to lay blame on certain players. I think it's enough to say that Valencia was looking short and Sanchez was looking long.
Yeah.
And Escudero was looking at the ball.
Yeah.
Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
So Escudero steps and wins. That creates a sort of 50-50 situation. And if you'd asked me after the Saturday game against Liverpool, I would say Matic, I'd back him to beat anyone for a 50-50 ball. Vasquez was the guy that Simon Zaza tried to get sent off with the elbow. I think after watching this, I maybe understand why Zaza was more determined to get him sent off. Because Vasquez, just because he's a danger. So Zaza beats Matic to this ball, which is really where this all breaks wide open for Sevilla. Then it's what? And Ever Banega splits the midfield, gets the ball into the feet of the guy whose name I keep forgetting, Sarabia. Then he feeds in Ben Yedder. Ben Yedder beats Eric Bailly with a sort of a stutter. Ball is in the back of the net. It's a goal.
Yep, it's a goal. It's an interesting call there. Yeah, and I think two other key things here. One, you already hit upon a little bit, is that I am very curious how. Like if you have the energy bar from FIFA, where Nemanja Matic's energy bar was heading into this game.
He would have started orange.
Because it was, I would say, an uncharacteristic performance from him. I think is it start green and then drops down to red, so yellow or orange in there?
It's been a long time. I would say it goes green,
it's probably
yellow,
not even what it is anymore.
Green, yellow, orange, red.
But it was... there were a few...
It's probably just emojis now.
There were a few very uncharacteristic giveaways from him. There were some very sloppy decisions where he went for back heels. At one point, he didn't see a player coming and just got the ball taken off of him.
Darryl-esque.
And it didn't feel like the assured, strong performance of Nemanja Matic. And that, I think, was a big part of it. And then I think the other big part was that once United were kind of being broken upon, when that counterattack came, I think there was a little bit of uncertainty about what to do. And I would say, I'm going to point the finger.
Smalling here?
I'm thinking of Chris Smalling, not just that he was the only one who's doing it, but he's the one who stands out the most to me. That it's Sarabia with the ball. He's a good 6 yards away, at least from Chris Smalling.
This is before Sarabia slips it through for Ben.
And Chris Smalling decides that's the point, he's going to square him up. But you can't do that from a player 6 yards away. Now, maybe he was trying to catch Ben Yedder offside.
I think, because we rewatched this many times. This is when we had to use the eye drops for you.
Yeah.
I think he's squaring up, ready to defend Sarabia running at him, but then he sees Ben Yedder in his peripheral or just to his right running past him, and I think he thinks, all right, I'm going to freeze and catch him offside. But Baye's going with him, so there's a miscommunication there. And Smalling's caught in two things, right? Is he trying to defend Sarabia or is he trying to catch Ben Yedder offside? In the end, he does neither.
And to me, that's not a miscommunication. That is a poor decision on Chris Smalling.
Yeah, that's
because it is a failure to notice that another player is running. And to me, I'm trying to think of the example on the fly, and I'm struggling. But it's if I make a mistake, but you're the one who suffers for it, and I'm well, you're the one who suffered, so it's your fault. Yes, you might have stepped, but that might have been that was not the right decision in that moment. And then I would say trying to square a player up when they're 6 yards away, you're still giving them tons of space and time to pick out a pass.
Certainly enough space to pick out a pass.
And also there were players covering, so I think if Smalling continues to drop and lets that gap close a little bit, that pass isn't on anymore. And it's going to be a bigger problem for Sevilla.
And again, I don't disagree with anything you just said about Smalling, but I think rather than laying specific blame at specific people, this is definitely a team-wide problem. Because when the ball gets given away the way it did, suddenly there's a huge sort of essentially a counter-attack. And counter-attack really, when you're the defending team, means panic stations. Right? It just means a lot of people having to make quick decisions, and some of them are going to make decisions that aren't coordinated, and then some of them are going to be the wrong decisions, and the ball ends up in the back of the net. Fair?
Yeah. And when that happened, and I think this is the thing, I'm speaking as a Man United fan now.
Okay.
I try to be neutral to the extent possible, but I'll say this. I think the thing that was very disheartening for me is and I know John Strong kept referencing that comeback against Crystal Palace.
This did not feel like a game where Matic was going to score a winner from distance.
It did not. And I would say this, even if you go back to, and I know this is maybe a bit much, but the 99 final, United hit they didn't really look like scoring. They looked like they were going to lose 4 or 5-0 to Bayern Munich. They end up winning 2-1. But there is that sort of 5 minutes, last 5 minutes, they're going to turn it on. And even when United did get those chances, even when Lukaku scored that one and the announcers were trying to make it seem like maybe things are going to happen, you kind of knew it wasn't going to, because you can't go from stodgy, sit back, let's defend, let's cause problems, let's play long balls. If you don't have a kind of cohesive attack going through, you're not going to get those goals. And forgive me for talking for a while, but I would say this is the flip side of the flip side that we talked about after the Liverpool game, about how this is where I would say Klopp and Guardiola, they do sort of have that advantage of when you do the same things, your players get used to the rhythms, they learn how to play that system, and then they're a bit more comfortable.
I would double down on that by saying if your system is sort of take a lot of risks and make sure to attack, which I think is a thing that you can say Manchester City do, and a thing you can say that Liverpool do, and a thing you can say that in most games Alex Ferguson had his Manchester United team doing. It is much easier, and I know this from just like our own experience playing, it's much easier to go from an attacking mindset to just, we've really got to score now. You just keep the attack going, essentially. What Mourinho teams are asked to do is go from a very sort of dossier heavy, here's your very specific instructions, like really, like you said, rigid, disciplined thing. If you suddenly have to, all right, we're going to tear that up and just everyone go for it, it's very hard to make that mental adjustment that quickly.
Yeah,
you know
I mean, and I think
that's why the fans go attack, 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 attack. They don't say defend, 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 attack, 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 attack.
Or follow the instructions in your mind, or follow the instructions in your mind, or follow the instructions in your mind.
Never mind attack.
Yeah, but I think you're absolutely right. And like specifically going back to Paul Pogba for a second, the talk is that, he can't play in a 4-2-3-1. He's not disciplined enough. He doesn't stay back enough. He doesn't do the defensive work. And so if you hear that, if you're Paul Pogba, if you internalize that, I'm assuming you get talked to a whole bunch about that in training, when you get subbed into a game and you're told, look, you got to stay in your shape, you got to stay in your position, when suddenly now they need you to go roaming and marauding and make things happen. If you've been getting yelled at this entire time, if a dog has been told, go pee outside all the time, and then suddenly you're like, nah, pee inside, the dog's going to be like, wait, what's happening?
Suddenly there's a fire.
Hold on now.
There's a fire, and you're like, you got to pee inside.
Exactly. It's going to be like, no, we have covered this. I am not supposed to do that. It is a mindset shift that is very difficult to have happen, let alone have happen at home, in a Champions League game, in a knockout round game, when you're losing.
So, I'm a Pogba admirer. I really enjoy watching him in full flow.
Yeah.
I am starting to think maybe Mourinho is not the coach he needs to be playing for. Like, I think Mourinho is the coach that could sort of give him a defensive edge and like really like help him have a more defensive element to his game. But that's not the best version of Paul Pogba. You know what I'm saying? I think I would rather see the Paul Pogba playing for a Guardiola or a Klopp, or someone who's going to give him a bit more freedom of expression.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think I just have hesitation to say that because, number one, I think I'm hypersensitive to the idea of like, yep, somebody's got to go, and I don't want it to necessarily be either one of those.
But I'm looking at it not from like, Manchester United don't need him, get rid of him. I'm thinking of more like Paul Pogba doesn't need this version of Manchester United to get him somewhere else.
Yeah, and I don't know how that happens, because I don't think you can let a player go, bring him back for a lot of money, and then let that player go again.
It's very embarrassing.
Unless you're Chelsea. And then you can sell Nemanja Matic, and then he can not have a strong game against Sevilla.
Anything else you want to talk about with this game? I am fully willing to indulge you in any aspect of Manchester United Sevilla. Before we move on to very briefly talk Roma.
I think the final thing, and again, this is like a personal, emotional thing.
Is that kid that winked at the start?
Yeah, that was interesting. I'm glad you caught that one. No, I think it's you have kind of stumbled upon the like very frustrating, slightly depressing aspect of Manchester United, is that I don't fully understand how it gets better, because if it gets better in terms of like they win every single game, that means it's Mourinho's system being even more defensive, and like you can't really get rid of Pogba, you can't get rid of some of the players that they brought in for lots of money.
Yep.
So it feels like there are a lot of very talented players. There's a very high profile manager, but it feels like you've got like a jigsaw puzzle with the game where you have to like fit the circle with the circle, and it's like these are not the same games, these are not the same parts. I don't know if this is going to work.
We need Jose Mourinho to be visited by three ghosts.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like it really needs one of those big change of heart type moments, because no one ever said that Scrooge's business wasn't pretty successful. They were doing fine. Just everyone who worked for him was miserable.
Well, I think one of the ghosts was sitting in the director's box tonight and not looking very pleased. So I'm sure he'll be visiting with Jose
Alex
Mourinho.
Ferguson would be one of the ghosts, right?
Yeah.
It would be, Ferguson?
Bobby Charlton?
George Best? Maybe?
Yeah, sure. If George Best can get there on time.
And
he'd
Christmas
be late,
Future, I'm not sure who Future would be.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think. One of the kids? Angel Gomez shows up.
Federico Makeda.
There we go.
That's who it would be. All right, so...
Remember that time? Remember that time I did that one goal? Come on.
I think that's enough on Man United Sevilla.
Probably.
Congrats to Sevilla.
Yes.
We get to see Ever Banega do some more passing. That'll be fun to watch going forward. Roma, Shakhtar Donetsk.
I hope listeners could hear how much I was forcing that. Yeah, yeah, that's great. They're gritted teeth. I'm so excited for them.
So we weren't able to watch this full game. It was on our sort of small screen, our lower screen, but really attention was on the big screen. And Man United Sevilla. We did see Edin Dzeko's goal, 1-on-1 with the keeper. The toe poke nutmeg, I believe. I can't offer any good analysis of this because I've really only seen it sort of as it was live on the small screen with no commentary.
I can say the goal for Roma and the first goal for Sevilla were vaguely reminiscent of each other in that it was a striker running off the ball in a very intelligent manner, that they waited, they occupied space, they stayed between the lines. When the run was on, they made the run, they stayed on side. They basically broke the line and caused problems and then took the goal very, very well. In this case, it was Dzeko very much wide open after he broke the line, but it's still a really smart one-time finish. I think with the outside of his boot, Megs the goalkeeper, puts it in the back of the net, and that's really all it took.
All right, so Roma go through, Man United do not, Sevilla go through. Before we talk some more, Taylor.
I'm going to quietly weep.
You feeling okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to make you feel better. Because today's show is sponsored by Squarespace. I hope Squarespace will make you feel better. Because don't you feel great knowing that our website is super secure and very nicely designed on the Squarespace platform?
That does make me feel better,
There we go. Bit of commerce to cheer you up.
You lost me because I was pondering, if cloning technology were real, could you clone Ferguson and then make him younger and just keep having a different iteration of Sir Alex Ferguson? And if so, would Manchester United copyright his DNA just to make sure that nobody else could get him?
That's on the very top tier Squarespace plan.
Okay. They offer that?
They do.
United should invest in that.
But you have to reach out specially and request it.
Okay. All right. They should really, really promote that a lot more.
But they don't actually have that feature. But features they do have include sort of guaranteed updates and security that Squarespace themselves take care of for your website. So you don't have to go and worry about any of that stuff yourself. It is all happening in the background. And a thing we haven't talked about before, the mobile version of your website is already taken care of. Every design with a Squarespace website has a mobile version already built into it. So, for example, if you're listening on your phone right now, I would encourage you, I'm trying to think of a website based on Squarespace that we know looks good. Let's go with TotalSoccerShow.com.
I've heard of that one.
You heard of that one?
Yeah.
If you go there, you'll see the mobile version of our website on your phone because it's designed to be adaptable. Maybe not like Mourinho.
Yeah, you don't have to, first of all... hurtful. You salt in the wounds, kicking a man when he's down. But also, I appreciate it just because, you know when the site isn't optimized and you have to move the phone around and you're adjusting and you just look it reminds me of the old Brian Regan bit about walking into a spider web. If you do that from a distance and people are what just happened to that guy? If you're just off in the distance, shifting your phone around and you can't figure it out, people are that guy doesn't know how to use a phone. Is he from the past? Is that what's happening? We got time travel and cloning happening, people.
So that doesn't happen on TotalSoccerShow.com because of Squarespace.
Yes.
So if you want to build your own website, go to squarespace.com. Build it for free, get it the way you like it, and then finally, when you launch it, use the offer code TSS for 10% off. TSS for 10% off your first purchase of a Squarespace website.
Yes, and listeners, if you could see the terror in Daryl's eyes when he tried to remember what the promo code was at the last second, you too would be laughing.
I think I got it right.
You did.
Right? Unlike my offside decision and my West Ham corner flag symbolism, I'm pretty sure I got this one right first time.
I can't wait for the clumsy audio insert of, listeners, I did not get this right.
How dare you call my inserts clumsy? I think they're very smooth.
They are. I appreciate that you always equalize the sound, though, because that is the worst when it's a quiet podcast and then suddenly they've jumped in at the last second.
Oh, always hard limit, Taylor.
Yeah.
Always hard limit.
Always.
Boost and hard limit.
That should be one of our rules to podcasting.
Podcast audio tip. Increase the volume and hard limit and you'll get some nice equal levels.
Get a pop filter and drink water also. And we're out. And Daryl drinks water. As I say, thank you to Squarespace once again for sponsoring today's program. I'm sorry I took us off on two different tangents, but now I will take us to the Scouting Network.
Let's go.
We've got several scouting reports to get to today, starting with Mike Wills scouting Julian Brandt. I know that if I mispronounce that, Daryl will let me know. The 21-year-old German attacker for Bayer Leverkusen. Julian was a super sub again at home against Gladbach this past weekend. The game finished 2-0 to Leverkusen, and Brandt sealed the win in the 93rd minute after Gladbach fullback elected not to cover Julian, almost did it, until he had the ball about 10 yards from goal. That sounds roughly similar to what United did.
Does elected mean they all took a vote on it and they voted to not cover him?
Yes. Yeah.
Guy Jedwab is scouting Serge Gnabry, the 22-year-old German wide forward, on loan at Hoffenheim from Bayern Munich. Guy says Hoffenheim manager Julian Nagelsmann warned Serge Gnabry about his attitude, essentially saying that he doesn't create enough chances for himself, particularly in the second half, and that when he does, he doesn't capitalise on them. Mm-hmm. So is that saying that his attitude is not selfish enough?
It was a much longer quote that Guy sent to us, but it was essentially he creates 4 chances roughly a game. He doesn't do much more than that, and even when he gets those 4 chances, he doesn't score them, is I think what he was saying. So basically, 4 chances, then kind of disappearing and not scoring is not the productivity they were looking for.
Man, Nagelsmann sounds like a tough boss.
Well, read on.
Gnabry responded by playing a role in all 3 goals of Hoffenheim's 3-0 win over Wolfsburg. He got the MLS assist for the first, held the ball up and then scored the second and forced the third, which was an own goal. If Nagelsmann was looking for a response, this was it. Go on, Serge Gnabry.
There we go. Good coaching from Julian Nagelsmann. It might be the reason why he might not be at Hoffenheim much longer. Logan Jurgens, scouting Ismaila Sarr, the 19-year-old Senegalese winger for Rennes. That's Ismaila Sarr with 2 R's. Sarr scored the equalizer for Rennes in their 1-1 draw with Saint-Etienne. He cut inside from the left to score with a glancing header and now has 4 goals and 3 assists on the season.
James Pearson is scouting Mason Toye, the 19-year-old American forward for Minnesota United. We talked about him in the thumbs up, thumbs down. Oh, I forgot. James has written a letter. It's like a Civil War style letter.
I just had a flashback to your pun from yesterday, and I'm angry
and
again.
You're laughing.
I'm angry again.
Thinking how funny it is. I thought it was good. Okay, so James says, "Mother, the campaign is progressing well." I thought there should be drum beats in the background.
And a fife.
Yeah. I've had my first taste of action against the Orlando Regulars at the field known as the Purple Palace. General Heath sent me in late in the battle, after 70 minutes of action. My charge across the enemy lines opened up a gap for the irregulars known as the Batmen to slice through the enemy lines and support the charge of Ethan Finlay and his Iron Range lads to take the hill and the field of battle. Morale is high. We return home next week.
Mm-hmm. The epic battle of Minnesota versus Orlando in the Civil War.
It'll go down in history.
Yeah. Todd Ito scouting Takefusa Kubo, 16-year-old Japanese attacker for FC Tokyo. Kubo came on again as a late sub in FC Tokyo's 2-0 loss to Jubilo Iwata. Since it seems...
Can I just stop you to say, easy for you to say?
Since it seems like Kubo is only going to get 10 to 20 minutes per game, are you trying to make me frustrated? Is that what you're doing?
Because I know that you're...
Yes, he said it so casually.
You're frustrated. I know you don't like it when I do that, so I thought I'd draw extra attention
to it. You just said yes so casually.
But keep going. You're doing great.
Since it seems like Kubo is only going to get 10 to 20 minutes per game, Todd says he will only send in reports when the youngster does something meaningful.
Thank you, Todd.
Unless we would prefer otherwise.
I mean, maybe there's definitely a bar for meaningful, right? We don't just want to hear someone play 10 minutes because it's not that.
Yeah.
To be honest, we're creating content for listeners. No one wants to hear about a player just playing 10 minutes. So I think if you find it meaningful, definitely send it.
There it is.
Yeah. Jim Brochar is scouting Jonathan Klinsmann, the 20-year-old American goalkeeper for Hertha Berlin. Jim says Jonathan Klinsmann apparently didn't want to play in England or the United States because he already knew English and stated that a major priority in moving to Hertha was to learn German. I was born here, he says. I wanted to be able to come here and speak freely. I wanted to learn German. This was definitely one of my top priorities. Jim also noted that Jurgen Klinsmann is married to former model Debbie Chin, who is American and not German.
We were speculating in a show, I think last week, as to whether or not young Jonathan already speaks German.
Yes.
If maybe Jurgen Klinsmann's wife was German as well, so like they spoke it in the home. Seems like that was not the case, and so maybe Jonathan is trying to learn it. Maybe that explains why he doesn't socialize as much with his teammates.
That sounds like he's taking a big risk.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. We shall see. Goalkeepers are crazy, man.
They certainly are. Up next.
Oh, right. You just read that one. James Porter scouting Dele Alli, the 21-year-old English attacking midfielder for Tottenham.
I've heard of him.
Dele Alli seems to have found the late-season scoring form after going down to Bournemouth 1-0 and Harry Kane's injury.
It's fine.
Spurs switched to a 4-4-2 diamond with Ali and Son up top. Dele then scored a smart goal and put in an inch-perfect assist in Tottenham's eventual 4-1 win. He now has 10 goals and 15 assists on the season.
Those are some pretty decent numbers.
Not bad.
All of a sudden. I just realised that Dele Alli could be like the English Clint Dempsey at the World Cup, where if like the striker, so when Josie Altidore got injured at the World Cup, and we put Dempsey up top as a forward, England could definitely end up with like Harry Kane starting injured and we just put Dele Alli up there and it doesn't feel quite right, but we battle on through.
But
you know
then
what I'm saying?
who will make English goalkeepers look like a laughingstock?
Well, not Clint Dempsey this
There
summer. Zach Lippert is scouting Alejandro Guido, the 23-year-old American midfielder for Club Tijuana. Guido got his first yellow card of the game in the 78th minute. Uh-oh, that means there's another one, doesn't it? And wasted no time getting his second 2 minutes later. Two wrongs do not make a right, they make a red. So, Zach.
Important lesson, Zach.
That is
well
a scouting
done.
report. Thank you.
John Youngblood, final scouting report of the day, scouting Rio Griffiths, the 17-year-old English forward for Tottenham. Griffiths started in Tottenham's 3-1 victory over Arsenal in the Premier League 2 version of the North London Derby. He didn't do a whole lot worth noting, but a 17-year-old starting for the U23s is perhaps noteworthy in and of itself.
Yeah, I've heard good things about Rio Griffiths.
Well, we shall probably hear more.
Let's hope so. More scouting reports on Rio Griffiths. We mentioned Tijuana. It's worth noting that tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, Red Bulls host Tijuana in the second leg of the CONCACAF Champions League. It is on Univision Deportes this time, I promise. You can also watch it on go90.com. I'm going to set the DVR. Hopefully we get to watch the Red Bulls go through.
Fingers and toes crossed.
I can't cross my toes, but...
Not with that attitude.
You go for it. All right, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
I think thank you. I'm not really sure. You're welcome, is I guess what I'm going to say to you. You antagonizer.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We will, of course, be back tomorrow to talk CONCACAF Champions League and also Barcelona-Chelsea in the UEFA Champions League.